Hello, this is Dale, and this is a stormy Sunday afternoon, early evening, and I'm joined by Mike, and we're joined together as long as the weather doesn't toss us off the air. Mike?
Yes, that is correct. Which could be any time because we have wires in our ears.
Oh, that's always a delight.
If an opportune lightning bolt happens to strike, I could have a big bolt shooting out of both of my ears, and that'd be the last time you see me.
And who in county government's going, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please.
Yes. Well, and right now I have my dog is camping around my feet here because, I am her security blanket. And so she's, when these boomings are happening, she's not going to be very far from me. So.
Well, I'm surrounded by electronic equipment, as you can see, so any booms that happen, I probably won't be far behind you, buddy.
We are relying heavily on the grace of God for this one here. So
we are at that, and normally we don't mention this, but as you can see over my shoulder, it's a Native American dancer, and it says the county chanter. We will be talking.
Maybe tonight. He's the one who's bringing the rain and stuff.
That's right. We'll be talking tonight about the county chanter or charter, depending on your pronunciation.
Or chowder.
Or chowder, right. Yes. And so I just had to point this one out because it's not super obvious that that's a Native American, but it is. And so we have things for you, and you're going to be asked for your opinion, and you can shout it at the screen. We can just about hear you from here. Yes. So first, we're going to start off with something that Joseph Rice said. He's not getting enough airtime, Mike. Joseph Rice said recently about the charter, about the sheriff, about the commissioners, and then we talked with the sheriff, who has his version of what it was he was doing during the Sugar Pine Mine challenge. So, Mike, let's go straight into it, bud.
Saturday, we had a miner come into our staging area. He was probably in his mid-70s. If he weighed 110, 120 pounds, I'd be surprised. He relayed to us on 5-6 weeks ago. He was working in his pit, digging his gold out of the ground, and he heard his dog start barking and alert. Didn't concern him until the dog started to howl in pain. And when he looked out of the hole to see why his dog was howling in pain, he found a gun pointed at his head by T.K. Lloyd, a BLM law enforcement deputy. Now, I was stunned and shocked looking at the size of the individual. The gentleman, obviously, he scrapes his living out of the ground, comes into town, buys his supplies, and goes back and scrapes his living out of the ground. T.K. Lloyd apparently felt he was such a threat, being 2 times this gentleman's size, they need to point a gun at his head. What shocked me more is the 2 other miners sitting there listening to this didn't react to it. Their reaction was, this is the way of BLM. This is what we deal with in BLM all the time. And this is the way they conduct themselves. We have had story after story after story just like this. People being abused by BLM law enforcement going on in their claims without a judge's order, without a search warrant, and violating their constitutional rights. And we're in a situation where I'm trying to figure out where our sheriff is. I have written him in emails. I have made phone calls. I have asked him to simply put out a statement to BLM that he forbids BLM to go on to the geographic boundaries of the Sugar Pine Mine until these miners are offered their due process as constitutionally protected. This would be over today. It would end. He refuses to do so. I am just absolutely confused. He finds it okay to go to the Rotary meeting and joke that sign up, we're going up to the Sugar Pine Mine and have a paintball war. I'm bringing the hot dogs. Now I'm trying to figure out, when we talk about the protection of constitutional rights, and we have an elected representative of the people that is supposed to protect these constitutional rights, it's not happening.
So Price was in here last week saying that that you had made a comment that we're going to have a paintball fight up at the Sugar Pine Mine.
I had about an hour-long conversation with Mr. Rice yesterday. It was a great conversation. He was upset at that. It was basically just it was a joke. People thought it was funny. They laughed. But he was upset. I apologized to him for the comment. It is what it is. People can blow things up all they want. I absolutely respect what the Oath Keepers did, the stance they took up there at the Sugar Pine Mine. I respect the stance on the miners and where they are, and I'm actually working with legal counsel now together to make sure that there's issues that we can address in the future when this kind of stuff comes down. The nice thing,
right? Because as it relates to, the charter does say certain things about what local authorities should be supportive of, and I'm assuming that your conversations with Wally are kind of along those lines.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's a learning process for all of us. For me, I'm still new. I'm still gearing up. I'm still ramping up, and I'm learning more about what the BLM has done in the past and are doing now. And so I'm going to start addressing some of those issues. Just to put it plainly, I'm concerned. My job is to be the conservator of peace. That's my job, and that's the role I took in the Sugar Pine Mine situation. I was on the phone daily with BLM. I was on the phone daily with the FBI. I was on the phone very often with Mr. Backus and Mr. Rice to assure the safety of everybody. And I think we were able to negotiate and speed up the process, because I think oftentimes you'll find that the BLM will be non-communicative. And I'm finding that out. And now in my new role in dealing with them. So again, myself and Mr. Hicks, the legal counsel, are going to start addressing some of these non-communicative issues. I know he worked very hard to get them to respond to him on several things, and I want to partner with him to make sure that these type of things don't happen again.
Right. Any chance in the future you might take a more openly supportive role of the due process rights of citizens of the county, as opposed to, this time it was sort of like you were staying back and watching what happens behind the scenes, but maybe more
what's open. Interesting about that is that I didn't stay back and watch. I was an active participant in making sure that their rights to due process were served.
That may have been the case, but that wasn't openly apparent to people, and maybe making that process a little bit more transparent.
Are you asking me to be a better politician?
No, what I'm saying is that perhaps if you are that active behind the scenes in the future, maybe you will make that more visible to people that you are, because it seemed like you were sort of missing in action.
Well, if the people want me to stand up and say I'm solving this, I can do that. But I'm going to do my job. I understand that people are going to want maybe more of this and more of that, but I'm going to do the right thing at the end of the day, hopefully every time. And that's my focus. I come from the belief, or the foundation, that I need to make the right decisions. The right decisions are often the hard decisions, not the political ones. The politics of this job is the one thing that I don't like. I'm not going to pander to people. I'm not going to respond to silly comments and things like that. It's a serious business. If another situation like that arises, I can handle it. I can handle it differently. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. The way I handled it personally, and from the standpoint of the office and being a conservator of the peace, in my opinion, was spot on. I don't want, if I take sides per se, I have beliefs, mind you, but if I take sides in a situation like that where it's my job to negotiate a medium and to also make sure that the rights of the miners is upheld, then that's what I got to do. If I all of a sudden side with the BLM, all the miners are going to be upset, and I'm not going to be any good in my job, in my role, which is to negotiate resolve, and which is exactly what happened. They got their due process, and I think they got it faster than they would have if miners stood by just by themselves. So I applaud the Oath Keepers for stepping up and taking a stance. I think they. I don't know that it had to be that big of an operation, but nonetheless, who am I to say? I'm not an expert in dealing with the BLM yet. Maybe they know something I don't know, but I think there will be future situations. Maybe I'll handle it a little bit differently. I may seem like that I'm just in the background or whatnot, but I'm doing my job.
Well, I mean, it's clear from the first part of the video with Joseph Rice that he had certain expectations of government that he didn't think were being met. He had certain expectations of the sheriff that he didn't think were happening. Now, the sheriff, on the other hand, believes that he was doing that. And, in reality, though we did not see it, if he was on the phone with BLM and saying, "Hey, listen, you guys need to back off," or whatever, we don't know what the content of those conversations was. Then, I guess you could make a claim that he was doing his job. We don't know what that is. This is why, and I guess it's funny. He asked me, "Are you asking me to be a better politician?" And I said no. But now that I'm thinking about it, maybe because a politician will say, "Hey, here I am. I'm in the midst of this situation. I'm doing this, and perhaps this was a communication issue."
Well, he acted a little surprised. He seemed a little bit surprised that people were saying, you seem to be, as you said, missing in action. Oh, no, I was involved all the time. Well, is it just Joseph Rice, the miners, the Oath Keepers, you, me, and that's it for people who were, everybody else was sure that he was involved on a daily basis and on the phone all the time? Is it just us, Mike?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question, but just here, let's put some context to this because our charter has amendments in it, and at the beginning of each of these amendments, there's a little paragraph there called intent, and it says the intent of this charter amendment is to provide the citizens of Josephine County with local protection of one of their inalienable rights as originally defined by our founding fathers in the United States Constitution and Bill of Rights. Now, that's one part of it. So one might assume from that if somebody is coming in and you have made the complaint, you have called the sheriff and said, "Listen, my rights are being violated," you might expect some local protection if you were to take this intent paragraph literally. And then
you asked him about protection. You used that word. Mm-hmm. And he indicated that he's working with Wally Hicks, the county legal counsel, to see that that's done, right? Isn't that what he just said?
Right. Yes. And then later, here's section 4 of any one of these amendments. There are some that have to do with due process, which directly relates to this case. It says the Josephine County Board of Commissioners and the Josephine County District Attorney must enforce all the provisions of this charter amendment. This enforcement must include citing persons charged with violating this charter amendment by issuing a Class B misdemeanor citation. No person shall be immune from such citation, regardless of any personal or official capacity whatever. Judicial proceedings regarding such citations shall follow the same as in any issuance of any other misdemeanor citation.
Now, before we play the videotape of Wally Hicks talking about this, just a little bit more context. For those, not you, you're our audience, you already know, but for those who say, well, it's kind of a dry, boring subject. No, it's not, because look, this applies immediately to something.
The rubber's meeting the road right here.
Right there, right in front of you, and it is about the charter, and it's about protection. And when Mike and I look at this, it looks like it's saying that they must step forward and protect the citizens. And our intent is this, and we want you to do this, and please do this. And then somebody will look at this and go, from another kind of perspective, it actually says we must do nothing. I don't think it says we must do nothing.
Yes. I have a hard time getting that from this, but in the mind of a lawyer, it could be different. Now, there's also another circumstance here. Put yourself behind the eyeballs of the county council. We are right in the midst of, whether, we're talking about this a whole lot or not, maybe they are in the halls of government. And this is a situation where they are looking at it and going, what steps should we take? And one of the main jobs of the county council is to mitigate liability for whatever. So yes, to protect the county government and to protect us from being sued. But here's the thing. I'd be interested to know if conversations took place behind the scenes specifically about this particular topic.
They don't like talking about it. But let me give you folks a scenario. Let's suppose that we had different commissioners. Oh, that seems like a good idea to me. And imagine what the effect would be nationwide if these commissioners, when this kind of thing happens again, because they're talking about, well, this could happen again. Imagine the press coverage that would be given and the effect it would have on the country if 3 county commissioners were standing there, armed or not armed, they don't need to be armed, and they were like this, and they said, you know what? You don't get to do that here. We're here to protect the citizens, and we're telling you, congratulations for the wonderful things you do, but you step out of line in Josephine County and we're going to react. And we're standing right here, and go ahead and just try to run your big tractor, your cat right through us. We are not moving aside for you. You're going to have to obey the law. Now, isn't that the kind of commissioners you'd want? No, let's have it interpreted for us.
Yes, I personally, yes, that is what I want. To me, this right here, this is the charter. This is a social contract.
Yes.
This tells me what I am to expect from my government.
The number one thing they say is protection. The number one the thing that they say is we're going to make sure you're safe. Now, we've seen 2 instances where they're not doing that. What's up with this?
And you'll kind of hear. And in a few minutes, we're going to play this video with Wally Hicks, where we're discussing this. And it was a good thing that I read those 2 portions of this charter before we go into that, because it's not really clear. It was hard to lay perfect context to it. But knowing that we're talking about those 2 particular parts of this charter when we're talking to Wally here. So.
And one more thing I'd like to toss in there, Mike.
Well, here, hang on a second. Let me just finish this thought, because what he is saying is there is no obligation on the part of government to do anything about this when somebody else is doing something to one of the citizens. What he's saying is that what this is commanding government to do is to not do any of these things. In other words, you shall not go and violate somebody's right to bear arms. You shall not go and violate due process with this person. That is what if I am interpreting him correctly, and you can check that out here in a couple of minutes when you're watching the video, this is what I interpret him saying.
Well, what I was going to say is 2 things. One is these are amendments to the charter. Now, sometimes when you've got the original documents, there's a little flowery language and thee and therefore and that kind of stuff, but not in an amendment. The people say, no, we really need to beef this up. We need to strengthen it. We need to be sure to put in there our intent is this. If you don't understand any English, then here's our intent. And they made that crystal clear. And these are amendments. Think about how much effort it takes to make an amendment to the charter. It's a really big deal, and everybody's got to vote. And you have to, so it's a really big deal to get that in there. So to say, well, maybe this isn't what the people meant. No. The other thing is, and this happens all the time with these rules about is it okay for the commissioners to make backroom deals when there's nobody there? No, it's not okay. And why do we have to keep reminding them? Because they don't want to be reminded. The thing is that it used to be a long time ago with the church that you needed someone that spoke Latin and could read to tell you what the Bible says. Okay? We don't need that now. We don't need it to be interpreted for us. We can read. We can go look at it. Mike and I, we're citizens. We care. We're doing a show about it. Okay, well, you need a lecturer that's going to tell you. No, I don't need a lecturer. I don't need someone who speaks Italian or Latin. I don't need a lawyer. Thank you very much to Wally. Thank you for talking with. We're citizens, and we can see clearly for ourselves what was meant by this.
A fantastic point. And on that note, here, let me just take a couple of minutes because, every once in a while I second guess myself and go, am I an idiot? Am I just such a simpleton that I don't understand what this thing is really saying to me? So today I dialed up our friend Viken Nickelodeon.
Oh, come on. Viken Nickelodeon, come on.
Yes, yeah, okay. Vic, our friend Vic, and we had this little exchange when I read section 4, and here that is. In section 4, it says, the Josephine County Board of Commissioners and the Josephine County District Attorney must enforce all of the provisions of this charter amendment. This enforcement must include citing persons charged with violating this charter amendment by issuing a Class B misdemeanor citation. No person shall be immune from such citation, regardless of any personal or official capacity whatever. Judicial proceedings regarding such citations shall follow the same as in the issuance of any other misdemeanor citation.
Well, how is it possible to get that one wrong? I mean, so let's say, any person whatsoever representing government decides to infringe upon that right to keep and bear arms, which is spelled out in the U.S. Constitution. Well, this is saying that that person will be subject to arrest for a misdemeanor. I mean, that's it. There's no way around it. That person shall be subject to arrest. It's a requirement.
Yeah, right. And see, this is the issue that we're having, is that there seems to be some interpretation of this. Wally seems to believe that this does not require any action on our part, or on the part of local government, that it doesn't require any action at all.
Well, did you ever offer a premise on that? I ask because, law enforcement officers out there, there's a theory that's been bounced around in the court saying that they're not actually required to protect you. Even if they see a criminal beating the snot out of you in an alleyway, they don't actually have to step up. They're under no personal risk if they just stand by and watch. And when their job, it is spelled out that they must do something, I'll have to disagree with that weird legal theory. So is that where he's coming from? Because what these plain English words say is really hard to get wrong. They're required to protect the Pickles County.
Right, and to some degree, that is what he is saying. He even cites the Bill of Rights, and he says, well, in the First Amendment, it opens by saying Congress shall make no law, as if somehow that is an infringement. It is well, that's not the right word. It's a hindrance on government. It is commanding inaction on the part of government.
It's fair to say with the First Amendment, what it says is Congress shall make no law restricting freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, petition government, etc. And it's restricting only the federal government, which is why it says Congress shall make no law. The Second Amendment doesn't start like that. It simply says that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and is not limited to only the federal government. It is a general, I mean, at all levels of government right there. That's the distinction that statement makes. And our own county charter, I mean, it commands the law enforcement of our county to arrest and charge with a misdemeanor anyone who's going to infringe on that right to keep and bear arms.
Now this
So
really
we're not crazy.
It comes back to a really essential point, and this came up with Mark Goins and the church that said you're not supposed to question authority. Jesus told you that. Okay. Once you accept if you believe that blindly, then you know that our founding fathers were all goofed up, and we never should have started this country because they were questioning authority. But
Right.
but if you look at that in the light of who America is, I'm hoping this is interesting for you folks. If you're looking at that in the light of who America is, and if we're the authorities, I think that's what it says, then it's government questioning us, and we are the people. And so when these people did these amendments, and they started each of them saying, our intent is this, you must protect this, you must do this. Now, what we don't need, I think, is we don't need someone coming in 35 years or whatever afterwards saying, well, what it really meant is that we're not supposed to do anything. I don't think I know that's not what I want them to do. And I at least want them to take, at the very least, a symbolic stand, just that, and say, no, you shall not pass. We need new commissioners. That's all. Mike? Uh-oh. Well, somebody's come in and cut us off. So I'll just talk a little bit while Mike is struggling to get back on the air. I can't hear him at all. He
Getting
may
back
think
up on
that,
this.
oh,
There
you
he is.
are.
Yay.
There. Hello.
You're back. You were gone for like a minute.
No, that wasn't me. That was you.
No, it was you. I'm still seeing the light. Well, we'll find out at the end of the show.
We're going to find out at the end. We'll have someone come in and interpret it for us.
Yes,
because we're incapable of interpreting things. I think we're good authorities about what we want, and that I believe that any sane, rational person would say, no, wait a minute. It says you must do this, so you are obligated to do whatever you can to protect us. Oh, no, it doesn't mean that. It means 10 other things.
Yes.
Well, let's let our question and answer with Wally Hicks go, and he'll speak for himself.
Yes, indeed. Here we go.
Perhaps they should refer to the charter and think about whether they should,
whether they have any responsibility under the charter.
Right, exactly.
Is your reading differ than ours? I mean, it's English.
Oh, you mean okay, so you're asking if the commissioners are compelled by the charter to intercede in the certifying mind?
Yeah. Or listen, to at least come out and say, because it does look as though there was a circumvention of their
right to due process.
Yeah, right to due process. Their Fourth Amendment to Fifth Amendment rights there.
What I'm seeing in the charter is it says that it shall not be enforced. The charter is commanding the district attorney and the commissioners not to enforce laws, and I didn't see them.
Oh, okay.
I didn't see them enforcing any law. I mean, I didn't see any violation there. Is what I'm saying. Plainly.
No, in other words, this only applies. Yes, but
if they do nothing,
they would be citing themselves. Wait a minute, I was about to enforce that. Then I issued myself a citation, so I stopped. It's. No, what I'm saying is that if it obviously is relating to people who are trying to make an enforcement of a law or something to that effect that is in violation of the intent of the charter, and then they would intercede. Perhaps I'm reading that wrong, but that seems like what it says.
What I'm hearing, rightly or wrongly, is basically you're asking whether doing nothing is permitted.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that it is actually.
Yeah.
I think that it actually is. Yeah. It says that they
What
do
is
not
the point
enforce.
of this then? What is the point of it? So I guess it has to be open to interpretation. Perhaps the commissioners don't believe that their rights are somehow being violated, but if the commissioners did believe that their rights were being violated,
The rights of the minors.
the rights of the minors, or anybody else for that matter who this was happening to, are they not compelled by this to do something about it? And you seem to say, no, they're
No,
not.
I don't think so. No, yeah. I think so. I think they're prohibited from enforcing laws that may be interpreted, et cetera, but I don't see them being compelled to.
Then what would be the clause in there about citation and you know, it seems to say,
I mean,
to
yeah,
intercede. Let's look at some
this is
full-size type here.
easier, probably.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that they're prohibited from forcing on the people, using slightly different language, things that are unconstitutional, but they're not encouraged to protect, not required to protect, or even encouraged to protect the rights of those people. They can just sit there and watch it happen in front of them. Well,
I don't know about that. I mean, they're not to enforce laws. The charter says they're not to enforce laws that meet certain criteria. It does say that.
right.
So
Okay.
similarly, the U.S.
Okay,
Constitution.
but listen to this. The intent of this, this is section 29.1 due process. And right at the beginning, it says intent.
Yeah.
The intent of this charter amendments is to provide citizens of Josephine County with local protection of one of their inalienable rights. Yes, protection. What does that mean? Inaction? Protection is not.
That's how I read it.
I
That's right.
I see what you're doing there. That's very nice. I'm sorry, I can't do anything about that.
Well, they're not providing protection
as originally defined by our founding fathers in the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The following provisions shall be adopted into the Josephine County Home Rule Charter and shall govern all actions by individuals, organizations, both public and private, within Josephine County. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And it seems, I mean, if you're reading this, that somehow, if this is just a statement and it doesn't mean anything, and no one is going to intercede on your behalf, I don't see the point of having it in here.
I don't see anywhere in maybe this will help. The Bill of Rights itself in the U.S. Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anywhere in there it compels the government to intercede or do, frankly, anything. It prohibits the government from doing things. I've got it here, and we can go through it. But
yeah, it prohibits. But then if they do it, if they're in violation of it, there's nothing that compels anybody to do anything to stop it.
Yeah, the first words are "Congress shall make no law," so it's demanding inaction.
Yes.
Which I think is consistent with what we have here in our charter.
So demanding inaction.
Yes, but okay.
Is the result of this.
Okay, now
then they could say, well, we're actually commanded to do nothing.
I don't know. You know, I can tell you this: that
that's the kind of show it is.
Yeah, but the First Amendment, there are court cases. There are court cases that deal with this issue of compelled speech, that the government can't compel people to say things because it's protected by the First Amendment.
All right, now we have an attorney general in the United States.
Yeah.
And the attorney general has seen fit through the ages to get involved in the South, to get involved in various cases, to say, hey, you know, you are violating people's rights and this is prohibited under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Now, why in that case does the attorney general have the feel that he or she has the admonition to go do something about it when that doesn't apply here?
Because it's an arbitrary thing.
I don't know.
Because he's making it up.
But on to the subject at hand.
Yes, on to the subject
at hand.
Wait
just 1 second.
Okay.
Let me just ask you this then. Then what does local protection mean?
That's a bit broad. I mean,
okay,
you're pointing at a provision there that says that
the intent of this
charter
charter amendments, I think that S is a little bit of a typo, is to provide the citizens of Josephine County with local protection of one of their inalienable rights as originally defined by our founding fathers in the U.S. Constitution, Bill of Rights.
So where's the local protection?
What does that mean?
Again, I think it's demanding inaction.
But
Bill
then,
of Rights
Seems
demands
like it's saying
inaction.
it demands local protection.
yeah, but
Okay,
I mean,
well, different-
how are you protected by
Reasonable minds can differ on that, but my reading of
Yes.
that is as I've described. I mean,
Okay, all right.
I don't have any more analysis to go on that.
I'll take your word for it. I just, I guess the interpretation can be subjective.
It's not intended to be, but unfortunately, our charter is more subjective than I think people hoped it would be, as we talked about last week. So
Is this a case of me reading that and wanting to see something in it
Probably.
that isn't necessarily there?
probably.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
You dreamer.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, wow is right. So we have this document. He said, well, the charter offers the protection. So on a rainy day like this, you just hold that charter up over your head, Mike, and it will protect you.
Yes.
No people will
You
do
know,
it.
listen, in the heat of, the urgency of a 40-minute meeting with Wally and everything, I lack the eloquence to argue the point well.
You need more than
know?
40 minutes to be eloquent? I haven't noticed that.
Listen, my style is a little bit herky jerky, and so, perhaps I'm not getting the point across. I personally think that that was, I don't quite understand how he could rationalize, the two sections that we read and come up with the interpretation that he had. I think only he would do that, or only someone who has that mind, a legal mind, perhaps would come up with that. I'm perplexed and frustrated by that explanation of the charter. I really am.
Well, I appreciate the fact that he talks to us, okay? That he even gives us the time. Okay.
Yes, and it is very enjoyable.
And
really
he's a good sport, and he is doing the best that he can to explain to us. But as I mentioned before, we don't need ministers to explain the Bible to us. We can talk about it and talk about levies if they absolutely insist. We don't need lawyers to explain to us, well, I know this is what it says, but it's not really what it means. I sure don't need any government officials saying, well, it might be best for us if you interpreted this as we're supposed to do nothing. No. The intent was written by the people it was an amendment. It wasn't even the initial flowery language. This is dead clear. This is what we want. Well, we don't know what you want. Yes, you do know what we want. And stop telling us you don't.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it too. I'm saddened by this whole thing. I hope that we can find clarity, and so that we can all read this and agree what it means at some point.